Welcome everybody to another FanIt webinar. Today is one of the most important topics, I think, for the right contractor who are ready for this, ready to hear this, or maybe they're not ready to hear it, but they should hear it. And that is, it's one of the most difficult things to do, but when you have experts on your team that help you, like today's guest, Jamie Jansen, founder and CEO of Next Rock Advisors. Thank you for coming on, Jamie.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
If you are an owner of a contractor or any business, really, B2B, B2C, but specifically contractors, and you're wondering, how do I get myself out of the sales seat? This is the webinar you need to watch. And we're going to cover some important topics today. So we'll kind of go over that. What is the dilemma that owners of businesses, specifically contractors, any really face when they're trying to scale their business, because they're the ones who started it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What is a sales playbook and why you need one to make this transition? And then we'll talk about going from a doer to a coach and a leader and a manager. That's the other thing that a lot of owners don't understand, is when they want to scale their business, their role has to change. So hopefully today we're going to talk and give you guys some inspiration and some good information to think about in terms of making that transition.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. So talk to me about what owners go through, Jamie, about what is the big deal of an owner making this transition? Why do they, I mean, there are a bunch of things listed on the screen here, but from your perspective, what do you hear owners go through?
You know, what happens is owners generally start a business because they're passionate about something, right? Or they think they can do something better than somebody. And they don't think about the end game at all, right? This isn't about how do I become rich and how do I retire. It's I have a passion and I think I can do it better than everybody else, or at least than everyone I know. So the end game kind of creeps up on them at some point, right? And what happens is they're like, okay, I'm getting older. I've actually got employees now, and I want to take care of these employees. But I'm older and maybe I want to do some more vacations with my family. Maybe I'm thinking about selling this business or transitioning it to a family member in some way, probably through a transaction, whatever that looks like. Or maybe my health is not doing very well and I'm concerned that I'm the one that's actually keeping the lights on here, right? And how do I get out of that situation? And so, yeah, one thing that you just brought up is in that part two is the playbook. And there's definitely ways we can make sure that everything's in place to be able to not only hand off the sales process, but how do we continue to bring in those leads, right?
Yeah. Well, the dilemma, the thing that I hear you saying is they've been on a treadmill, feeling like there's a lot of activity, they're getting in shape, they're a good business leader, but they're still the one closing all the business. And they see a path that is about stepping aside and not being the one closing all the business in order for them to really step back, step out and work on their business, not in it as much, and become a different piece of the puzzle. And there's some psychological things that go through that, you know. There's the hero syndrome where it's like, oh, I got to be the hero of this business, so I got to close it. I got to, you know, there's the worry around, well, who do I hire? How do they get trained? I'm so used to everybody wanting to talk to me and looking for answers, and no one can really do it like I do it. That's also part of the hero syndrome. And so you have this person that's extremely talented, extremely qualified in the sales role, and now you're asking them, or they're asking themselves, how do I switch out of this role because I'm ready? That's the other thing too, is what I've experienced is in myself and in with other business owners, is they have to be ready. They have to be at a point where it's like they have to have some reason, whether it's, in order to transition this, I need to get out of this role. The other thing you didn't bring up, which is if you're planning on selling all of your share or a portion of your share of your business or transitioning it to somebody, your business is worth less if you're in the sales seat as an owner.
100%. Yep. It's a giant risk when you go through your valuation, right? What
Yeah.
business do you really have once the person that actually brings in all the work is gone?
Yeah. Yeah. That's how buyers look at businesses. It's like, oh, are you going to stay in that sales seat once you get a big check? Probably not. You might for a little bit, but that's just, that's not trading. That's not trading out of your role. That's really just keeping your same. So people don't do that. They don't collect a big check and just stay in the same role for very long.
And back to a point you were making earlier, the clients I work with, this is very hard for them. Almost all of them enjoy the relationship part of their job and being a business owner. So that transition, and I guess thankfully in many ways, it's not a light switch, right? You can't just, nope, you're no longer in the sales role.
Yeah.
And many times what we do as part of that transition is still keep them part of the sales process, but it's really about that part right where it's like the presentation or the demo, and they come in and they can still be that hero, that guy, that owner that can close that deal better than anyone, right?
Yeah.
So that now they just have a lesser role for a period of time as they're transitioning out, but they can still be right at the top of that relationship, right as that client signs.
Right. Right. So let's talk a little bit about, what Fanet helps people do. If you think about the three pillars there at the bottom, is really having and building consistent lead flow. And when you're an owner that's in the sales role, you are always constantly asking for lead flow. You want a pipeline. You want to make sure that, and by the way, these are all things, these three pillars are things you have to have in place, or part of what you have to have in place in order to transition out of the sales role. These are all things that have to be locked in. And I won't go into detail on these things, but it's basically, are you getting enough lead flow in? Do you have the process and systems to follow up on sales, to have speed to lead on sales opportunities that come in the door, and maybe nurture those that don't close, but and then do you have the ability to onboard them? And once your team that delivers services does a great job, do you have a way to get reviews, testimonials, referrals, do PR work? So there's a lot of things that you have to have in place to make the transition. And so when you look at this, it is really about making sure that those things are in a place where you can, if you're looking at it as a business owner, you can see that all these things are happening. If you can't see this stuff in your business right now, it's a clue that maybe you should focus there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I look at companies is it's a system of systems, right? Your company is a system. The departments are subsystems. And what we're talking about here is how do we build out that sales system, right? And how do we make that machine work without the owner turning the wheel?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, the other thing that we're talking about here is how do you set yourself up for the best chance of success as an owner making that transition? And part of that is having foundational things in place around this, but specifically around the sales process and system. And that's kind of where and why you need a sales playbook. Part of that, having that system, is having a sales playbook. I always, whenever I hear the word playbook, I'm a big fan of the NFL. If you're not a fan of sports, but you're a fan of business, the NFL is maybe some say it's like a cartel, but we won't go into that. But it's they generate billions of dollars a year on it. And when they put their product on the field, their players on the field, all those players have playbook. In this situation, this is the play. Here's your role. Here's why you run this route, or here's why you go into this defensive package. Here's what you do in your role. And when I hear the word playbook, that's really what we're talking about, only we're talking about it for the owner to transition. That's my take on it. how do you describe what a sales playbook is?
Well, the sales playbook should be literally everything you need to hire and onboard a salesperson, right? So starting at the top, strategy. What is the mission and vision of the company? That should be defined. Okay, let's go into the sales strategy part of this. What are the differentiators? What your uniques? What does your ideal client profiles look like? Which is critically important, especially as you start thinking about how your lead gen channels, right? If you're working with an agency, they need to understand that. And this is actually a problem I run into with a lot of agencies is they keep working with an organization and they keep getting feedback it's bad leads. Well, is it? Maybe your ideal client profile wasn't tight enough, or maybe you don't have a sales process to actually handle the leads and qualify them properly, right?
Yeah.
But the sales playbook should handle everything from objection handling to here's the documented sales process and everything that's a part of that, your tools and your resources, and everything should be laid out by the stages. Here's how we're going to measure everything. And you could literally create a predictable revenue model. If you give me the amount of activity that we're measuring and you pair that with average deal size and sales cycle time and your win rates, I could tell you when and where or when and how much money's coming, which obviously managing cash flow, that's really important, right? So literally the sales playbook is everything you need to be able to coach and onboard salespeople. And it's your playbook and it should be tweaked and reviewed annually.
And it's interesting that you use the word coach. Tell me why you use the word coach.
So when it comes to coaching, I look at that more as in one-on-one situations, right? So we're looking at inside your operating system. You're going to have pipeline reviews, team meetings, one-on-one meetings, and as a sales leader, you're going to participate in your leadership meeting. Your one-on-ones, this is your coaching opportunity along with any ride-alongs that you're doing. So you're going to literally be asking about where's things at in the sales process. Okay, where are you at so that you can move this to the next stage? What's the holdup? And then you're listening for things that they're saying, and you can help provide feedback and coach on what they're saying to their clients and customers, right? You're just trying to get things to move faster through that sales cycle and improve your win rates as you do. So you're bringing your knowledge to your salespeople, and a lot of that stuff is spelled out in that sales playbook, and that is your playbook to help coach with.
Would you say that a lot of times owners keep this close to the vest, not maybe intentionally or maliciously, but just because it's a time saver? Like, oh, it's going to take me a ton of time to document all of this stuff.
Correct.
Is that a big problem?
Owners are unaware oftentimes of what the secret sauce is, even that works for them. And that's part of my program is I got to draw that out. And we're going to put that into the tools and systems, right?
Right.
So that's step one is how do we get that out of them? Where are we winning? Where are we not winning? How are we winning? Let's get that all in there. But remind me again where we were going with that question.
Well, I just often wonder. You kind of answered it, and you said, "Well, they're unaware."
Mm-hmm.
And when people are listening to this or watching this, I want them to know that there's a process for getting all this information down, because oftentimes we go, oh, well, we hear owners say, well, I just don't have the time to document all this. And even if I did, even if I had an outline like this, which could help, I'm still, how do I separate myself from what I'm doing today? How do I make that leap? And a lot of owners think it's this huge chasm. And I guess where I was going with it was, it doesn't have to be.
No. So for instance, with the way I deliver the service is literally just 290 minutes a month for 6 months. And we go through the process right here that you see on your screen. The phase 5 isn't even part of the 6 months. That's an option at the end, but literally we're going to figure out phase 1. I'm going to draw out as much as I can of that information from you that we need to build into the systems and tools. And we're going to do that. And then we're going to start hiring. And then we're going to do a little marketing tips and tricks using some AI that you can do yourself in just a few minutes, a day, a week, and start generating some interest. And I'm going to have a chance to even look through some of those resumes that you've got coming in and give you some feedback and what to look for, what not to look for, so you don't make those mistakes. The average tenure of a new sales rep is 14 months. And that's tough. You get it wrong every time. Owners, more often than not, and it doesn't matter what position is, they always hire the people they trust. It's usually a friend, or a really good acquaintance, and it's not necessarily the best fit for their need, and expectations get unaligned pretty quickly.
So let's
And
drill
another big mistake small business owners like this make is they think they just can go out and hire a VP of sales and build the whole thing. They'll build it all, they'll sell it all, they'll be able to replace me. Never going to happen. It takes more than one salesperson to replace the owner. The owner's win rates are always going to be better. The trust is always going to be there. So yeah, that's the biggest mistake I've always seen. And the way I handle it through this is, all right, you're going to go into a manager role now for a period of time, and we're going to start building that team until you're ready to promote or hire someone to take your place completely.
And so how do you make sure, we'll drill into each of these things or pieces of each of these things, but how do you make sure that sales don't dip as you're making the transition?
You keep the owner in the process for a period of time.
And that's what you meant by ride along.
Yep. Not necessarily.
Okay.
So depending on your process, right? If your sales process includes like a presentation stage, so you've already qualified them, you know that they're a good candidate. You've already done your discovery meeting. Now they're bringing them back in and you're going to present whatever solution that you're there to fix, right? That's when you bring the owner in, and the owner comes in and gives the history of the company and the culture and what they're trying to build and whatever that is, and share their journey so that they understand the business owner a little bit and get a connection with them. And that just helps tip it over to the sale.
Well, you're kind of talking about a B2B process where you have a presentation versus more B2C where you might have a quoting process.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
But to me, it's the same thing. I'll take that back. It's not the same thing because it is different, right? From B2B, you're probably going to have less volume than B2C. But all of this still applies. You're still going to have to put together a sales playbook in order to replace yourself.
And there's still a
your
sales
process might be different. Your steps might be different. The tools you use might be different, but it's still the same thing.
Absolutely. I said a presentation stage. It could be a demo stage. It could be we bring them in for a tour stage, right? Well, it just depends on your business.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's walk through a little bit of detail here. So phase one, when you look at phase one, clarity on vision and goals, why is this so important?
All right, because that's going to drive a lot of things, including your compensation plan. Okay. You want to reward the activities that align to your goals, and the activity, and I'm saying activity specifically because small businesses want to always reward on the results. But I mean, let me just put an example like this. You got a 5-year-old at home. You ask your 5-year-old to go sweep the driveway, and you know what? January 1, I'm going to give you an ice cream cone. You think they're going to go sweep the driveway? No. They're probably going to get 3 or 4 ice cream cones before then. Right? So you got to reward the activity that's going to lead to the sales and the behaviors you're looking for. And that might be, as a part of your vision, is we want to grow this set of our business or this set of our customers. So let's reward those activities that are going after that set of customers better, right? Because we want those.
You're also assuming that the owner knows which activities lead to sales.
They should have a pretty good idea. They should have a pretty good idea.
But that's what I'm saying is if you know what activities lead to more sales, the right activities, you can then reward for those.
Correct. But we're going back higher here and we're saying vision and goals.
Right.
So what you are today might not be in your vision of what you want to be in 5 years or 10 years.
So goals specific to sales. Is that how many sales, how much are they worth, that kind of thing?
You might have goals around, we want larger deals. We want to stop working with the little ones. I mean, it seems like every marketing agency in Twin Cities here wants to stop working with the little deals.
Yeah.
They won't even talk to you unless you have a commitment of 100K minimum, right? So that was part of their strategy to shift their business to be more efficient in that way. It's hard to mix small projects with big projects and keep it aligned in your schedule. So they just make a choice, right? Businesses do this all the time. I know a small plumbing and heating company that literally decided we're not going to work with customers that aren't interested in service agreements.
Interesting. And
so they had to figure out.
Turn the other ones away. That's hard for a salesperson to turn away opportunity.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing about sales. The narrower you can get your ideal client profile, the more you're going to win. Telling somebody you can do everything will never win.
Yeah. Yeah.
But telling them you're really good at this thing will win you business.
Well, it also makes it easier for your team to deliver if that team is
Absolutely.
geared to deliver those things
Correct.
at that size or level.
Yep.
So, okay, vision and goals. It's who are we, what we care about, who we deliver, who's the ideal profile. Goals are, and I'm just, summarizing, obviously. Goals are, here's how many sales we need to make, worth this much, the type of sale that we need to make over this period, whether it's monthly, quarterly, it could be weekly, but depending on how fast you're moving.
Mm-hmm.
It also might change depending on seasonality. If you have a business that's in seasonality, or is impacted by seasons, or other outside factors. But once you have that down, then it's really, there's a lot that then goes into the playbook. Now, I know this is part of the playbook, but phase 2 is essentially creating the playbook, documenting it all. Is that right?
Correct. Yep, that's 100% right. We're going to put it all together. It's going to land into the 10 to 20 page document, depending on your business and complexity. And at that point in time, we'll have, and the playbook's one thing. And then in addition to that, we'll have all the hiring tools. How do you select the right person, build out the job profile that will create the job description. And then, of course, the interview scorecard that small businesses never use. It's usually more like, did you like them?
So let's go back to the phase 2, the playbook, putting it together.
Yep.
As you're going through this and gathering information, do you learn where there are opportunities or weaknesses in the entire sales and marketing process through this?
Yes.
And how do you, it's like, okay, well, we're missing this piece to the puzzle or that piece to the puzzle.
So one of our first conversations is really going to be about the size and structure, right? Because that's what we have to build. Once you're out of that role, who's going to take your spot, right? And sometimes it's going to take more than just a salesperson. We might need a BDR, someone that's hunting, and an account manager, somebody that's farming, right? And dealing with the operational chaos and making sure the customer is always okay. It really depends on your business and your sales process, how you want to set that up and where the handoffs occur. And again, it really does make sense to keep the owner plugged in for a short period of time to keep those win rates up.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's where there may be a crossover when you talk about building out a sales playbook in order to do it well. Or let's say it this way, when you do it well, you are identifying gaps that you have, not just in sales, but to support that all happening. Back to the 3 pillars: lead flow, sales process, and flywheel. So on the back end, getting reviews and all that stuff. The whole idea back to a playbook is to make the player that you bring in to handle sales, who is not the owner, the most successful they could possibly be, because they're not going to be able to bring to the table what an owner brings to the table in terms of authority, in terms of experience, just things they do in their sleep because they've been doing it for so long and they're the owner. You mentioned that a lot of times it might take more than one salesperson to replace an owner. Talk to me about that.
Well, again, it's the owner, it's their business, right? So they're telling you that we do this and this and this for our customers. You're going to believe that owner before the sales rep standing next to them, right? The trust is just inherently a little more there with the owner. And there's always a ramp up period, right?
Yeah.
So in my my thinking, I don't know a single business that doesn't have a growth goal that I'm working with, right? Be it 5%, be it 20%, whatever it is. So at the point where they're usually engaging me, they're at their selling capacity. They're at 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, and they've been stuck there for 5 years, 7 years, 9 years. And it's literally a matter of capacity for them to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's start with a less expensive business development rep. Don't go out and run out and get 100, 150K VP of sales. Let's get yourself a 60K BDR. And if they sell something, they make more money. We'll figure out that, right? And once you get them up and going, because this is an investment until they're going. Once they're paying for themselves, we're going to go get a second one. Now, the first one, is starting to actually generate more. And they've got capacity to do that until they're full. The second one's going to keep going, and they're going to get to a point where they're paying for themselves, but they still have capacity to keep growing. Over the 2-3 years it's going to take you to grow that, you still got your 10%, 15%, 20% compounding year over year growth goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be adding capacity ahead, right, in order to meet all the needs you're looking for.
So now we'll go back to, once you've got the playbook ready to roll, now it's about finding the right person to work their way into that sales role. And there's a lot of pieces. You say hiring tools. When I first started, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, you mean like Indeed? But you're talking about the tools it takes to build a hiring process, really.
Really, it's a selection criteria.
Okay.
That's the hardest part. And that's where everybody gets things wrong, right? I just talked to a business owner the other day. He was so excited. He hired this guy. He's been in the industry over 30 years where he worked. And he was really excited. And he calls me up. He goes, "What do you think?" And I pull up his LinkedIn profile and I go, "Well, you're a contract rubber manufacturer. And this person's been in product sales for the last 30 years. He's selling something tangible that people can see, touch, and feel and understand very easily. Whereas the salesperson you need is looking for somebody that has a problem that needs to be solved, and you're going to have to custom engineer and figure out how to solve that problem." Very different.
Yes.
Right.
I love that you're talking about this. It's so critical.
So transactional sales, more retail-like, right?
Yeah.
Versus solution selling, where you're doing a heavy discovery.
It's almost like, I'm going to use a strange analogy, but because I've been watching been binging some Dark Wolf YouTube video, or not YouTube, whatever they're on, but it's almost like taking a soldier that fights for your country, and one soldier is used to desert warfare, and the other soldier is used to jungle warfare, and then the third soldier is used to, fighting building to building in cities.
Mm-hmm.
If you throw any one of those soldiers into the different environment, there's going to be a steep learning curve, and chances of success are going to go down. So the selection criteria you're talking about is a big piece of it. There's these other things like, hey, have you described the job and what the expectation of that job is going to be?
Yeah.
Do you know how to rank and score different people that come into the process that you interview? So, because a lot of times you might have 2 or 3 that you think are good. Well, if you just go by feel, there's no way to actually score out like, oh, this person scored a 25 and this one scored a 12, even though I felt like good about both of them.
Yeah, that's why we build interview scorecards, right? Because it's the small business is so much of that whole, did you like them, right?
Yeah.
And you need something quantitative, qualitative. It can't just be about personality. Personality is obviously a big part of selling. You got to have some personality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, hey, how were you trained, right? I mean, if you're out there selling products all day and you're trying to get into a place where you're going to need some kind of technical background, you're probably not going to be successful. It's a different way of selling. And I've actually got 40 different criteria to figure out who the right salesperson is.
Yeah. Would you say it's okay? Because a lot of people would look at that, or might look at this and go, oh, well, I need somebody, I'm just going to pick random, moving and storage. I need somebody who has already sold moving and storage before.
Why? That's my first question. Why is that important?
Well, because they've seen, they understand the industry, the niche.
Yep. Nope. That's actually the reason why you don't want to do it.
Okay. Well, talk to me about that.
Here's an example. I just had this conversation with a owner of a solar installer integrator, and he was looking for another solar salesperson. And I'm like, why is solar important to you? Well, I'm hoping, their contacts will be able to bring something along. I'm like, well, as well as I do that you have a contract that won't allow anybody to take their clients with you. What makes you think they do? And I'm like, and personally, based on what I've seen in this industry, you guys would actually really benefit from a software salesperson. And he's like, software sales? And I'm like, yeah, they got it figured out. They're highly trained
salespeople, and they're selling something technical with solar.
Yeah, they're highly trained people, and they follow a strict process, and you have none of that.
Interesting. Yeah, selection criteria, there's a reason why it's highlighted. Compensation is also sometimes you get into a situation where it's like, well, what should I pay them? How do you look at compensation? You mentioned earlier about, well, we're going to reward people for the activities we want them to be doing in the sales role. The easiest one is, well, close business.
Mhm.
But how do you approach compensation for salespeople? It probably depends on what industry it is, but
Always.
yeah.
But there's generally speaking, there's 6 different types of comp plans. And what I say is no one is the correct one. It's generally going to be a blend of 2 or 3. So yeah, you're still going to reward for results, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. But I always look at it as like my example with the 4 or 5-year-old. What's going to be more effective is giving them immediate rewards for the activities that they're doing that I know will lead to those results.
Yeah.
Right. So if
And
I can get
you
more
have to have
meetings,
those activities defined.
yep. If I can get more meetings, I know that's going to lead to more proposals. And I know my win rate is this. It's a simple formula.
So how do you, so we'll talk a little bit about the right candidates, but I want to touch on one thing that you just brought up. So in some cases, you have salespeople that are, or for some business types, you have salespeople that are closers, and then they have business development reps that are out there prospecting for them, doing outbound outreach. But then you have kind of the marketing. So when we go back to the 3 pillars, the first pillar is lead flow and a consistent pipeline. And I'll just hang on to the moving and storage company here. It could be HVAC, could be solar. The reason why these companies largely hire a marketing agency in the early stages is to build lead flow, to get lead flow to that salesperson. In that case, when you talk about activity, you're leaning more, or that salesperson is leaning more on their marketing teammates to drive activity. Is that how you might look at it, or and therefore you don't compensate for getting leads in that sales role? You might compensate for proposals that you send out or quotes.
You're exactly right. What is that thing then? Right. And in a lot of businesses, it's not just one sales process. Think about if you're selling a product, we'll say tractors, and at the same time, you're doing service. Well, your service sales process could look different than your selling tractor sales process.
Right.
So you might have 2.
Yeah.
You might have 3. Right.
Yeah. Well, in the agency space, it is okay. We bring on a client because they need more organic traffic to their website to develop leads through that channel. But over time, what we learn is that, well, their CRM and their sales process that they have isn't really dialed in. But we know if we can increase conversion of sales we can help them do that by building out some automation and some process. If we increase their sales or their lead to quote rate by 10%, and just having their existing sales close rate of those quotes, sometimes that means $1 million plus a year increase just for doing that, depending on their volume. It's really amazing. And quote unquote selling that or positioning that doesn't happen with new sales. It happens with our account strategists, because now they've had a chance to build that relationship. Now we're an agency, we're a B2B company, versus what you're mentioning. You're selling tractors, a product, but you're also selling service. It might be 2 different people selling that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess where I was really going with this is I might have a sales process specifically that aligns with my marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
So marketing agencies, they're qualifying it based on the profile that you've given, right?
Yeah.
But I still want to do a sales qualification meeting. I want to still make sure that they have budget, they have the authority, they have the need, they have some timeline to get this project done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from there, it's like, okay, now I've qualified it, and how do I move that through my process now, depending on your business?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that is getting the right candidates. Now, we mentioned the hiring tools. You've got to have this stuff in place. We started to dip our foot in a little bit about, well, what makes the right candidate? And you said it's all about selection criteria. What are some elements of figuring out? And again, the answer is always depends. I know. But what are some of the elements in and I don't know, you don't want to list all 40, but you have 40 checkpoints that you look at to really score a candidate. Maybe give me some feel for what those are.
Sure. 1 second here. Oh, I don't even have it pulled up. So think about, is it a complex sale? Is it a transactional sale? Is it, put me on the spot and now I can't even think about it. Hold on one second.
Yeah, no problem. As you're looking for that,
I got it. It's just got to come up here.
this is going to be skewed for, and I'm just going to take a guess, but in my experience, the right candidates, it's skewed towards industry, what they're selling, maybe even the market they're selling in. Is it nationwide? Is it in Oklahoma City versus LA?
Absolutely.
Is
it a hunter? Is it a farmer? Is it a big brand, or nobody knows the brand? That's very different for a salesperson. Do they gotta go out there and sell the brand, or is it 3M? Everybody knows who they are. IBM, 3M, whatever
Right.
it is. Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it technical or non-technical? Is it, like I said, solution or complex? Are there, you have to write your own proposals?
Yeah.
Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do you need to develop your own leads, or are leads being provided for you? Is this channel sales or direct sales? I mean, there's so many criteria to really nail down exactly who it is you're looking for.
So here's one thing that always pops up for, I would say, smaller service contractors, especially labor intensive. So you're looking at roofers, moving and storage, not so much HVAC because there's more technical in there. But more labor intensive type of businesses, hardscape construction. And that is, and I chose this image specifically because all those companies that are labor intensive, sheetrockers, a lot of the guys and gals that start those businesses don't see themselves as professional. But the ones who end up seeing themselves as a professional, they outperform the rest. If you're a moving and storage company and you think you're just a lumper, you just carry heavy stuff around and move it from one place to another, then that's the perception people are going to have. And that's the perception of the person you might bring in to sell for you or try to sell for you.
Yep.
But what we're talking about here is you have to be a professional salesperson. In other words, you want a professional salesperson to come in and replace the owner. And in order to do that, you have to know who those type of people are, or at least I would say have the potential to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And it's interesting. As I mentioned, salespeople, the average tenure is 14 months. It's terrible, right? And there are companies out there that go into the psychology even to figuring out how to hire the right salespeople. Like, I've got the tools that get you nailed down to the skills, but there's the psychology piece.
Mhm.
There's a company out there called Sales Genomics that does exactly that, where it's an assessment and it's literally trying to figure out what drives you, what motivates you, and if that aligns to the position that you're applying for, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult to find the right people in sales. And I do believe you can train anybody to be in sales as long as they have a personality, a good personality, 100%. But again, if they've really developed skills going in this direction, it's going to be really hard to pull them over into skills that require this direction.
Yeah. Well, what I like about this is that it's just like marketing. It's an investment that you're making in this process to build a playbook. Your chances of success, if you have a playbook, go through the ceiling. It doesn't mean you're always successful, but you bring up that tenure. And I don't know the percentages, but I would venture to guess that upwards of 90% of small businesses out there who are going through this process don't build a sales playbook.
Nope. And they try over and over and over again before they finally start asking for help.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because they're owners and they built something that is maybe even multi-million dollars, and like, well, I can handle this. I can.
Well, you know what
I found people to deliver in the field. Sorry to interrupt. I found people to deliver in the field. Why can't I find a salesperson?
Yeah. Well, what they say to me all the time is literally, I figured it out. Why can't they?
Yeah.
Right. I just hired this VP from this giant company. Why can't he figure it out?
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So that kind of leads us into that fifth phase, really, is you become a manager or coach. And I just threw up some, differences. I would venture to guess that most business owners who make this transition didn't see themselves as becoming a coach, but had to. I don't know. What's your experience in this stage with different managers or different owners that make this transition?
So this is where it gets interesting for me. There are those that are literally like, I just want to get out of sales. And we get done with the 6 months. We got the playbook in place. They're pulling the trigger, hiring somebody that we agree is probably a great fit. And then we get to this final phase and it's like, all right, I'm pushing the boat away right now, right? You're off on your own. You're going to manage this team with all the tools. And sometimes they go, you just did all this with me. Could you just manage my team? And I say, yeah, I can do that, right? Because honestly, they've been doing it all along and managing the whole business and finances and everything else. Sales is really probably a very small portion of their day, unless they got to their capacity, right? But managing a salesperson or 2 or 3 doesn't take 40 hours a week. You got your one-on-one meetings, you got a team meeting where you got to share what's working, not working amongst the team. And you're going to show up to the leadership team meeting and report on progress and escalate any issues that your salespeople are having. But what you don't do is talk to customers, or I don't talk to customers because you don't want the perception of turnover in your business. I'm a temporary stopgap. That's it. Right. Yeah. We're going to keep adding people and you're going to find somebody full-time to replace me. And because we're adding all that extra selling capacity, your operations is going to be just plunking away, trying to keep up. And that's where your focus needs to be now is capacity to deliver.
Yeah. I guess what I want to drill in, I mean, what you're talking about in terms of managers, whether you're in sales or IT or client services or whatever, this is what managers do. You mentioned one-on-ones and sharing information in a team, what the point of sharing that information is with your team. And coaching is a completely different angle. When to coach and when to manage could be a whole nother webinar, especially in sales.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about sales managers, there's usually more than one person, right? Or no?
No,
I'm talking. I don't know if I'm asking that correctly, but if it's just a company that just has one salesperson and now the owner, and that's the owner, and they're transitioning out, and you hire another salesperson, and then there's some transitional period where the owner's still involved with that other one person, and now you're just left with one person. Do you need a manager, or how do you look at that if it's a smaller business like that? Because we run into that a lot at Panic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of that transition. So we hire that first business development rep, we'll say, right? They're going to go out and hunt for business. And now the owner is now stepping into the sales manager role, right? You got somebody you got to manage now, and you got to hold them accountable to activity, and you got to hold them accountable to their goals. You're managing, you're measuring.
Yeah. Right.
And once you build out that team and they're paying for themselves, now you got an opportunity to promote somebody, to manage them. You get out completely, manage and lead them, or you can hire somebody. And if you don't want to onboard them with the playbook, I can still step in and help you there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we built it together. So
yeah. Well, and coaches are like, okay, here's not the I know you've got a playbook and all that stuff, and here's the activity that is happening. Here's what's going on. Here's some challenges. Maybe it's handling objections or dealing with different personalities that you get on the phone, or whatever that might be. A coach can help you. It's like the mental part of it. And the experience that a good coach would bring that to help you navigate and get through barriers as a player.
And that's what coaches do. It's all about making you better, right? I mean, even Tom Brady had 3 coaches all the way up until he stopped playing football.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably the best quarterback.
Totally. Yeah. It is something that you, and the great people seek out coaching. It's kind of interesting how that works. Maybe that goes all the way back to selection criteria and question, have you ever been coached before? So anyway, we're kind of, I putting this all into one package, and like, what can we leave people with when we talk about transitioning out of the owner, out of sales, and having a sales playbook? I saw this graphic and I thought I would just, use it, because I thought if you do it right, your new salesperson knows what to do knows what to say, can show potential customers information that they need, and can do all the tasks to close deals. That's my summary of it. How would you say, what would you leave people with that are watching this, that are owners, whether they're B2C businesses or B2B businesses? What would you leave them with?
I think the most important thing is understanding your runway, when you want to get this done by. To do this successfully, I would look at 3 years minimum for a runway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to get other people on board and up to speed, and there's always time it takes for that. And for you to be able to fully step out, and maybe it's you want to sell the business or whatever that reason is, 3 years will make sure you're more successful. And honest to God, what you have and what I have together makes a full system, and it really will work. I know it will work.
Yeah.
Me alone, I'm really strong in the B2B environment because it's all sales primarily, right? You're knocking on doors, banging on people's, whatever it takes, emails, LinkedIn, whatever that is, right? I love the marketing aspect and having a second channel or a strong lead channel like that versus, the table stakes, I call it, got to go to trade shows. Right?
Yeah.
Collect more cards because we gave away something free.
Yeah. Got to make that up in volume.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you hand those leads off to salespeople and they're like, yeah, did you even look at the title of this person? It's like, well, they wanted a shirt.
Yeah, that's funny. There's a whole conversation about the relationship between sales and marketing that we could probably have. I want to give time. Yeah. I want to give time to, first of all, thank you, Jamie, for coming on. I love your approach, but I want to leave time for Q&A. So I don't know, Jackie or Tyler, do we have any questions out there from anybody?
Taking a look here. I don't believe we do yet.
Well, we must have nailed it all, Jamie.
All right. Easy peasy.
Well, we're recording this. We'll put this out on our on-demand webinar page. We'll put this out on our YouTube channel for FANIT. And what I want to leave people with is they scan the QR code, we will get them a complimentary sales playbook framework for their business. Now it says service contractors here, but if you're a B2B company and you stumble upon this, we can also do that. FANIT focuses on home service contractors, specifically those local B2C companies, but Jamie also specializes in B2B companies as well. So go ahead and scan that QR code and look for this out on YouTube and out on our on-demand webinar channel on fanit.com. Thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate your time, Jamie.
Thank you, Tony.